Good afternoon, everyone. The Budget Advisory or Budget Committee meeting is called to order at 4:30 p.m. Could I have roll call, please? Okay, thank you. On the agenda, we have an action item to approve the August 14 committee meeting minutes. Could I have a motion? Oh, last time
We just need to let the clerk know if any members are missing for the record.
Okay, so we have Mr. Thompson missing, and I believe that is it. Okay, thank you, my apologies. Okay, so could I have a motion to approve the minutes from August 14th?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
I second.
Discussion? So with no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Abstention? Okay, so minutes are approved from August 14th. Next, we will move to public comment. Do we have anyone online for public comment? Okay, any in the audience today for public comment? None? Okay, with none, we will move to the next agenda item, which is information and discussion, presented by Dr. Diaba.
Good afternoon. Just to provide a short, brief recap of the last board meeting, we did submit the 5 recommendations, and they were by the Budget Committee, and they were approved by the board. And in the order of student achievement and instructional services, student support services, safety and security, employee salary and benefits packages, and facilities and operations. We shared the information with the board, kind of provided a brief overview of what we did, just like we discussed. It was a brief presentation because the board meeting was quite lengthy. So I do appreciate all those that were able to make it inside because it was full. And I appreciate those that co-presented with me and stayed the entire night. But as a reminder, with these priorities approved, I want to remind the group that all areas will experience reductions due to the significant decline. When we do start sharing the enrollment, we'll see that this year's enrollment is actually declining pretty quick compared to other years. And so one of the questions that did come up was, now that the district has these budget priorities approved, what's the timeline for preliminary RIF lists and information to the board? So I'll turn over to Mr. Silvas, who will provide a brief overview of that.
Thank you, Dr. Diaba. So for the RIF notification, we are looking as early as December, okay? And the purpose of us going in December with the preliminary RIF notification to the board, which will just consist of positions, okay? For example, what you would see if it's a administrative position, it'd be a 1.0 FTE admin. If it is a certificated position, it'd be a 1.0 certified. Safety, different things like that, ESPs, it would be by job class, it would be listed. But the goal is the earliest would be December, okay? The latest would be January. And the reason we'd say that the earliest is in December is that those individuals that are impacted, we'll give them opportunity to start looking for future employment, okay? Sooner than later. However, if we go in January, which is still okay, we would send the final RIF list names by February, or March would be the latest, okay? State statute-wise, we cannot issue contracts prior to March 15th. So the goal would be to have everything to the board, preliminary list with names, and then to be able to get the contracts out by March 15th, okay? So that's our goal right now. And just so the group also is aware that through natural attrition, if somebody is impacted that's on that list, we would follow our processes, okay, that will be developed and established. But I do want the group to know that RIFs are not based on seniority. They can be based on seniority based on state statute. Okay, so we'll follow those guidelines and we'll work closely and we're going to develop the criteria for the RIFs.
Any questions regarding the board meeting or anything that was discussed?
Just clarification, when you say RIFs as early as December, that is RIFs for next year, not this year?
That is correct. The RIFs will be for the 26-27 school year.
Just as a reminder, I think to the community and to the committee, is what we're working on right now is for next year. Actually, these recommendations were for next year. What we will begin working on is for the year after that, so 27, 28. So we're a year ahead and somewhat of a year in arrears in terms of reductions to the budget, but it's all, that's why the amounts are the size that they are, right? Because we're working kind of like a year ahead, and then this year as well, in a sense. And so we'll explain that in more detail as we start diving deeper into the budget in the coming meetings. Go ahead.
Dr. D'Alba and Mr. Silvas, I just want to make clear, I know there are other colleagues will be watching this meeting too, especially related to the budget. When you say RIFs and the list, this is all going through IBN, not this committee. I want to make clear that is what my understanding. IBN is where it is all worked out, right? All the RIF list and everything else,
No,
not IBN.
no, IBN, no. As the committee has tasked, you know, the presentation was made to the board. The board accepted the five buckets, right?
Five.
The 5 areas right now. And then as Dr. Diablo said, that we are going to be moving forward, looking for the 27-28 school year. But the list that's generated, we know that we've been tasked with developing and finding it, and we're still working on that.
Okay.
But ultimately, it will, you know, I believe the board will be briefed
Through
on the
talent.
directions through talent, through us. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. The other thing that was discussed at the board was future tasks for the budget committee. And so, again, I want to emphasize the board was very appreciative of the work that's been done. They appreciate all the time that you all have taken, the learning that has happened, the conversations, collaboration. I won't say debate. I think we're a very civil group so far. But I think that we've started peeling a lot of layers to school finance and budget, which is important. And we're in the beginning, right? And so moving forward, we did inform the board that we would be providing them the next tier of budget priorities by the May 2026 meeting, as we had discussed at our previous meeting. And then also we're gonna focus on fiscal transparency. And again, that's by sharing enrollment trends with this group, the annual financial report, and any budget revisions that are submitted to the state. The idea is for this to be that group that listens and hears about the budget regularly. And then again, continue learning and of course serve as advocates for school budget transparency. And so that was also accepted by the board, and they're on board with that work. Any questions about that? All right.
Okay, so moving forward to the next agenda item, we will be discussing an overview of local voter approved funding.
All right, so we've talked about two different buckets, right, in school finance or in budgets, and one is M&O, which is maintenance and operations, and that, let's think of it as kind of our regular money that we would spend on utilities, salaries, purchase services, just different functions, right, that we need to normally operate the district. The second bucket that we have is capital. And capital is for more larger item, like capital items that would be like, for example, this table is a capital item, right? The weapons detection is a capital item. Any type of expenditure having to do with renovations, a lot of the technology like laptops, computers, that kind of stuff is capital. So those are the two buckets that exist when we're talking about school finance for the most part. Again, generalizing, as I always do. What we have, what I wanted to review today, because it's important that we all understand that aside from our state equalization and what the state actually allocates to the school based on enrollment, there are also local voter approved funding. And I call it local voter approved because it really has to do with the tax base of the individuals in the community within our district that own property, and they pay that, and they actually vote to say, yes, we can, approve this extension or this increase in budget, or no, we don't think that we should approve it. And so two of those that we have embedded into our regular budget is the M&O override, which is 15, we can ask for up to 15% of our approved budget. And then we have a DAA or a capital override, which is 10%. For your information, we have an election this year where those two overrides will be on the ballot. And so we wanted to share information on what we use them for, and that's the purpose of this presentation. Aside from the two types of overrides that we have, we also go out for bond and ask the voters for an additional tax increase for bond projects. Again, bond projects it's all capital. We do have a large bond, however, we also have a lot of old buildings that need new pipes, new air conditioners, new roofs, and all kinds of different things. And so that's important for us to understand. Again, one distinction that I'd like to make is where M&O is utilized for salaries, the DAA, capital override, and the bond cannot really be used. It's very limited in what we can use it for salaries, but it's mostly for renovations, repairs, technology-related costs, different things. And so as we dive deeper, this is in your packet. I realize that it's smaller. We're trying to save paper. But essentially, the M&O override, what we use it's mostly for salaries and pay. But when we look at it, it's smaller class sizes, enhancing course offerings, electives. We use it for athletic programs, support services such as counselors, safety, security, and then funding parts or portions or different salaries on our specialty and alternative schools. Again, the amount that we have currently based on our budget, which is 15%, is about $31 million or about $32 million. As a reminder, as we decline in enrollment, right, our budget capacity is reduced. Our revenue control, which is that RCL, that's how much money, if you remember from last year, that's basically how much the money has said, this is the limit that you get, right? As we decline enrollment, that number goes down, which means that the total amount for the override also decreases. So it's important that we understand that, because it won't just be our overall budget that decreases, it's also some of these voter initiative, well, this particular one that also is decreased because it's dependent on the revenue control limit, which is the limit that we're provided based on our student. If you look at your tax bill, if you own a house in Phoenix or you know someone that owns a house in Phoenix, it'll call it out and say Phoenix Union override. and then it'll say the tax. The next one, the next override that we have, again, these both are coming up on the election, is the additional capital funding, or the DAA. And the DAA stands for District Additional Assistance. And so what we utilize that for in the district is maintaining our one-to-one devices, classroom furniture, upgrades to technology. We have added, or we are adding, asking our voters for construction and minor renovations. Again, as I mentioned, we have quite a bit of old buildings, and there's a lot of different projects that are required throughout the year that we feel that would fall within this smaller amount than the bond, and they're just things that need to get done. Again, the way that we get the bond is we go out, the way we get the override is the same thing. We go out, we ask for it. Different than the M&O override, this is a constant amount. It'll be 21 million, that's what we ask for. But it's up to 10% of our RCL. When I say that, that's the maximum, right, that we can get. And so one of the questions that always comes up is, how long do the overrides last? So the length of time is about 7 years. And so essentially, right, we are going out in year 5 before we have to start tearing down. So if the idea is that we go ahead, so it gives us a little bit of a buffer year. And again, if the override, if the taxpayers decide not to support it, what ends up happening is it phases down on year 6 and 7 by 1/3. The last year, obviously on year 8, we would have to reduce each of these budgets by those amounts, in addition to our decrease in enrollment. And so it's important to understand that these two amounts, while they're not a huge, 31 million is a lot of money, but when you look at our overall budget, right, it's 15% of M&O and 10% of DAA. When you look at these amounts, right, those are pretty much embedded in what we do in our day-to-day operations, in a sense. They are, additional, which is why we use them for these items, but our voters have continuously approved them. And so we're accustomed to it. And so it's important for us to understand that as we're going through these times of these reductions in enrollment. So any questions about the override? We will be handing schools these informational pamphlets, these handouts, so that they can provide to any community members that are interested in learning more about the override and seeing hey, what is it used for? What are the amounts? And so those will be provided to schools. So, all right. The next mechanism that the state has developed for us to acquire or request additional financial support from voters are bonds. And again, a bond, a little bit different than the overrides, where the overrides were asking the voters, hey, can we go above our budget limit? For a bond, it's more of a loan, and it's more taxpayers, can we get a loan to pay for these capital items? With the idea that that is paid right through taxpayer funds. And so again, the main purpose of the bond are for more long-term projects. When we're looking at, we're planning on putting 3 or 4 new chiller systems, or we're looking at plumbing systems or air conditioners or roofs, or we have to renovate this school because it's, at a point where it's no longer necessarily the entire area is not necessarily safe, right? And so we have to do different renovations. So a common question that comes up, or that will come up as we're doing this work, is, well, you're reducing the M&O budget, right, because of enrollment. How are we still doing, a renovation at this school site? And it's important for us to understand that the reason why we can do that is because this falls into the bucket of capital expenditures, which can only be used for that. We can't pay for a teacher salary principal salary out of the bond that's strictly used for these long-term capital projects. And so, again, that's something for the community and for us to be able to explain, right, at a very simple level, that there's these two buckets of money, and one can be used for salaries, the other one really can't. It's more for capital type projects. Again, our bond, usually they typically last, they're authorized for about 10 years. And then our bond is, the most recent one was in 2023, and it's for the amount of $475 million. And so we have, based on our capital plan, we've developed a plan to expend it and go out for bond again in 2028. Again, one of the questions is like, well, that's a lot of money. How, we have quite a few older buildings, and they need a lot of work. And so while this money, it's also used for fencing, it's used for different safety things, it's used for a lot of different things, and transportation. So we have buses, we have a fleet of buses, there's a lot of different things that we use it for. Most of you that are on the campus, I think, understand that, like, there's some areas of your campus that might be really nice, and then there's other areas that they really need to be renovated, and it's to ensure the safety and the aesthetics of the campus. So any questions regarding the bond?
Dr. D'Alba, I know that we feel very confident that it'll pass again, but what are we looking at if it was not to pass?
The bond in 2028? Again, well, we wouldn't have that authorization, which would mean that we would have to use what we're allocated in capital, which is a significantly smaller amount, about 30 million that we allocate into capital. That's what would have to be used to allocate. And just so you have an idea, a chiller system at a school, if it has to be replaced at one of our comprehensive, is about 12 million. And so it would be detrimental to our maintenance and maintenance of and upkeep of our buildings.
Dr. D'Alba, do you mind providing some insight on how we notify voters of their bond dollars at work? I know we talked about that previously, but can you address that, please?
Yes. One thing to remember is as we're going through this, something that we're working on with marketing is to start posting signs around campuses where there are renovations being done. So it says, these are your bond dollars at work, and then this is with a QR code where they can actually identify and scan it, and then this is what M&O is, this is what capital funding is, that's why this is being paid for. One thing that I didn't mention that I do want to mention as well that's important with bond funding is the bond really helps us shift programmatically to ensure that we're continuing to provide students with college and career opportunities, right? Because, for example, if there's a campus and we see a need for a specific program based on, market studies and different things, that's really what that bond can be used for as well, to say like, hey, we have to remodel this building because we're adding this particular program that requires this infrastructure. And so that's also an important thing to understand about the bond, because it's not just about repairs, but also looking at how do we continue to provide the best opportunities for our students as we move forward.
Dr. D'Alba, this one, the question is about the bond. You said it is like a loan, right?
Mm-hmm.
That means are we, within our yearly budget, we are also, there's a repayment that we do, or we just pay the interest to it? How does that work?
So we regularly pay the bond, and we work with our financial advisors to determine a payment schedule. But essentially what we do is it's a tax that's levied, and using that tax, we're paying the bond loan.
Okay.
And that's every year, just so you all know, we in finance meet with our financial advisors to kind of determine what's going to be our pay schedule. We do shift it from time to time. The way I like to think about it is this is kind of like your home loan, right? Sometimes you refinance, sometimes we don't refinance, but things shift in the payment, right? Based on needs and what's going on in the economy. One of the important things also as we go through this is I'm gonna go back to our contingencies and our fund balance. One of the questions that is regularly asked of the district when we go to sell a bond is essentially, how much fund balance do you have? Just like you're asked when you get a loan, right? How much do you have in the bank? We're asked that same question. We're given a rating, so it's somewhat similar to a credit score, but it's a rating. Where essentially we will be rated by 3 different companies, just like a credit score, and then based on the rating, it makes it either more attractive for investors to purchase the bonds or less attractive. So we have pretty much what most districts would consider, what you could get as the highest rating as a district right now, which is AA, and then we have one AAA rating, which is the highest level. And so that's something to consider also as we move forward. It's important that, right, they're looking at the operations of the district, and are we thinking ahead and being fiscally sustainable despite declining enrollment?
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I know we very initially talked about having a reserve policy. I'm sorry, that may be not the right term, but one of the ones that's directly related where we can work here, I think, will that also impact our ratings and those kind of things, having a reserve policy kind of thing?
While I can't directly say this is what the rating company is going to say, usually that is one of the questions that they ask. Do you have a fund policy? What is the fund balance policy, and how is it implemented? And so it probably does have somewhat of an impact, but I don't work for the rating company, so I can't tell you for sure what the impact is of having one or not. At the moment, we don't have one. So, any other questions related to the bond?
Can you explain a little bit the tax on this? So I understand with the overrides that it's on property owners and property tax. With the bonds, is it a similar tax, or is it a tax on something else?
No, the bond tax is also, there is also secondary tax. And so if you look at your tax bill, it'll say, Phoenix Union, and then depending on the valuation of your property. So when we talk valuation, it's what the county determines is the value that they're gonna use. There's quite a few rules with how that number, like everything else, it's determined by some formula that I don't understand completely, so I'm not gonna pretend to understand it, but they come up with a number. There's a certain limit and increases that can happen each year. So you'll see, if you look at your tax bill, your valuation might be a lot less than what your actually property value is listed on, or when it's appraised. And the reason for that is because we have limits on how much the valuation can go up each year. What they do is, for example, for the override, the M&O override, it's about 45 cents per $100 of assessed value. So for your average homeowner, it'll be like $77. For the capital override, it's about 30 cents per $100 of assessed value. Again, it's that valuation number though. It's not what your home is. It's not like the true, I guess, market value. And I'm not a real estate agent, so I'm not, but it's not what you would sell your home for, it's what the county has determined is the value. For the bond, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I can get that to you.
Oh, good. Thank you. And then the other one, to kind of follow up on that one, the district, and I know it was one of our options as far as like what is our reserve percentage? Like what is currently our reserve percentage of that we save?
So right now, we don't necessarily have a percentage. It's what we have because over the last 2 or 3 years, we had a significant amount of funding that was provided to the district. When that funding was provided to the district during COVID, there was expenditures that were approved that were placed in that. In doing so, we freed up some budget capacity, and then that then transferred over and was carried forward. And so last year, our fund balance or reserve was about 80 million. We've used some of that. Once we get our AFR finalized, I'll be able to give you an exact number. But ideally, right, we shouldn't have gone more than 3.5 million into that at the time. But right now, I can't tell you off the top of my head what the percentage is. Different districts have different values that they use. I've learned from different mentors that 10% is one value that some districts, but there's other districts and other mentors that I've had that have also said 5% is the best practice. I think that's something that we would bring forward, right, in terms of a fund reserve policy, and really the board would kind of have the final say on that to say, this is the percentage of fund reserve that's required.
So any other questions or discussion? Okay, so we're going to move next into item 7, discussion of overview of fiscal year 24 bond presentation.
And I will turn that over to Ms. Reese, the Executive Director of Finance.
There we go. Can you hear me? Good afternoon, Phoenix Union Budget Advisory Committee. My name is Priscilla Reese. I am the Executive Director of Finance. Today I will present our annual bond presentation. We present this to the board yearly to provide a comprehensive overview of our bond activities and financial status. If you turn to the screen, we will now share last year's 23-24 bond presentation.
There's a hyperlink, I promise. The audio's not coming through.
So while we're working on the technology, we'll take like a 5-minute break. Thank you. Budget Committee, we have about 30 seconds. Budget Committee members, can we return to the meeting, please? Thank you, everyone. While we were figuring out the technology, we're going to make an attempt to play the video presentation, but if it's difficult to follow, Ms. Ruiz will just present the information.
Good evening, President Napa, Clerk Marquez, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Andrade, Executive Team, and community members. It is with great pleasure that I speak to you about the Phoenix Union High School District Strategic Plan Commitment 9 and provide a brief financial overview of
We can go ahead and discontinue. I think it'll probably just be best for Ms. Ruiz to present. So do you mind moving forward with the presentation?
So it's on play. We don't have a PowerPoint, but we can, if you scroll through it, because essentially what it is we're required by state law to do this regularly, once a year. And it's essentially where we come out and we present to the board and to the community, this is what we used our district additional assistance override money for, this is what we used our M&O money for, and this is what we used our bond funds for. So it's a time where we come out to the community and we say, this is what we're doing. So if you want to, I don't know if you can skip forward to the next one, but so we can show some of the slides, because we just wanted to get feedback. So we talk about, again, what we just talked about. These are the different funding sources. It's a reporting requirement for the board to review, and then we give a snapshot of the expenditures. So I'll let you explain a little bit about that.
Yes, so we go in and we look at what we expensed the prior year versus what we budgeted for the current fiscal year. So this is last year's, so it tells us what we did in these categories. We have the non-administrative. It is directly off the pamphlet that we put out there for DAA. We also present our last bond that we had, and the last one was in 2017. We just finished that one up this past year, so that's what we put on here exactly like the pamphlet, what we had out there on the ballot, and then what was our bond sales and the expenditures that go with it as well.
And something important to understand, we are on the side of selling the bond, not buying the bond. And so what we do is we contract with a financial firm that will basically take, hey, Phoenix Union's got $475 million bond. We don't sell the full amount, as you can see here, right? We sold, and this is, I believe, the 2017 bond. So this is a bond that we still had in place, but at that point, you know, for that sale, we sold $152 million. So when we sell $152 million, that firm goes out and they get investors to purchase it. They come back and they say, this is basically how much it cost for the maturities and all the investment and of course their fees and everything that happens. And that is kind of the loan amount. And I'm generalizing because it's more complex than that, but that's what the loan amount is. But remember, when we go out to ask for the bond, right, it's like, this is the tax. And that's why there will be fluctuation in taxes, because there's also new buildings that are built. There's new houses that are built, right? The more property you have, then everybody's tax goes down a little bit or goes up, just depending on how much is purchased. So whatever is on these pamphlets, again, is they're estimates. Every year we calculate the tax rate. But the idea is it remains as stable as possible. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay, so now we're to the 23 bond, which is our current bond. Again, it's just representing the ballot language that we put out there. And then our first bond sale, it actually is the total. It's the bottom amount of 137. So we are working on that amount right now. We have until the 27 school year to spend that first part of it as we go through the year.
And this is the part that people are more interested in, because this is what we use the override and bond for.
So the slides are going to go over through the supports. We do teaching and learning, the technology services, and the construction part of it as well.
So a lot of our textbooks using our additional assistance are purchased through the override.
This is a representation of the construction structures that have been happening throughout the campuses, what our technology is being used for in the classrooms. And the facilities that the dollars are going to.
So if you can go back to the Hayden slide. Again, just to mention, like when we talked about how the importance of the bond and how it helps us shift programmatically based on our community's needs and wants, right? This is an example of there's a program and this is what we use it for. And so if there was a need for a vocational program or different things, that's how we would shift and use that funding. Yeah, so for example, another shift right in programming is the academies. And when we develop the academies at South, at Fairfax, at Trevor, that's bond money that's being utilized to shift those buildings to focus on those academics. And then there's our good old air conditioners. So something else that's important for everybody to understand, within each of these funding structures, there's a student portion and an admin portion. The student portion has to do with anything directly with students, and the majority of our funding is utilized on students. So, and then there's the admin portion, and that would be like if teachers need computers, administrators need computers, like that kind of stuff. So that it's not stuff that's directly related to students. And again, the majority of the funding is utilized on students. So, go ahead to the
Okay.
next slide. Yeah.
So at this time, we welcome your feedback. We're going to present a QR code for you to scan on your phone, and then it will take you to a direct survey where you can share your input. We're interested in knowing what you find important and what you would like to see more of. And if
And-
you wouldn't mind, we'd like share out feedback.
And this is important because we'll be presenting this at the next board meeting. So Ms. Cross has a highlight.
So, thank you, Ms. Ruiz, and thank you, Dr. Dialba. I do have a question regarding the survey. When would you like the feedback completed by? So that it gives us some time to maybe think about it, give us some time to watch the video on our own. Is there a deadline that you'd like us to complete this? Thank you. Are there any other questions or discussion?
Dr. Dialba, I know there's like MNO override to just conclude it, and DAA, and the last is the bond itself, right? But because Phoenix Union made huge investments in safety, perimeter fencing, a lot of if you see at Fairfax, the whole new entry point kind of things, these are clearly from one bucket, or it's mixed buckets kind of thing, to understand for me as a common public.
Yeah, so fencing, renovation, right, would be out of our bond.
Okay.
And it's a capital expenditure.
Got it.
Yeah.
So
And
safety kind
yeah.
of thing.
So safety for the most part, not the safety unit's salaries, right?
The physical.
But the fencing and anything related to that is typically classified as capital.
And we have made a lot of investments in the last few years, right?
Yes.
Especially for them.
And I can't tell you off the top of my head, I'd have to look it up, but we have made quite a bit of investments with safety and support of our students.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Ms. Ruiz. So just as a reminder, we should complete the survey by next Friday, which I believe is the 19th of September? Is that correct? Okay, so if we could get that taken care of, then we can move forward and be able to provide that feedback. Yes, is it possible to have the link sent out to all the committee members, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving forward, next item on the agenda is planning for the community information sharing and feedback strategies. Dr. Dialba?
So one of the things that we discussed as a committee was to be able to collect feedback and potentially not just use a survey, but also collect feedback from individuals in person. And so essentially what we need to decide is how do we want to collect feedback? In your packet, there should be somewhere a list of different events that are already, these are events that are already happening in our district. So if you look at it, one of the things that we have, for example, we have Student and Family Services sponsored monthly events. One of the reasons why we just stated it like that is there's quite a bit of events that Student and Family Services puts on. And so that is an opportunity where community members come in, and it's an opportunity where we may be able to collect feedback on the priorities. Also, there's marketing sponsored events such as the Expo, which I know board member Schaefer or voting member Schaefer recommended or wanted to discuss. We also have talent sponsored events like at job fairs, and then there's site specific. And our sites, when we look this up, my gosh, we have a lot of events happening at each school. And it's not just open houses. It's, we have parent nights, we have cafecitos, we have athletic events, we have learning and development days. We have other events, for example, for our CTE programs. We have quite a slew of different events happening at our campuses. I want to say every night. And so there seems to be a lot of opportunities for us to get in front of community, in front of staff, in front of parents. And so the purpose of this section was really just to kind of brainstorm and hopefully come up with some ideas as to concretely like, hey, this is maybe an event that we think would be valuable for us to get feedback. Or maybe this event is not a good event to do that. I know that there is, in speaking to the principals, at least last year, there is interest in us going in and kind of teaching families and community about at their cafecitos, like this is this is how the budget works, and this is the different parts of the budget and that kind of stuff. So that there is interest for in already. So I'll at this time just open it for any discussion. Do we need
Mr. Williams?
Yeah, in looking at this list, there are definitely ways that I would want this to be approached based on the audience. For example, at the expo, I would not want to accidentally message, this district's in a budget crisis, send your kid here. But something that could be a really good, I don't want it to be misinterpreted, but something that could be messaged really well. We are fiscally responsible and we are doing really cool things on our campuses. Can we highlight some of the improvements that we're making to our campuses? So there are ways to approach these where we're sharing different things very strategically. I love the idea of...
Mr. Williams, I apologize.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but
Oh.
because this is an action item, we need to make a motion before we go into discussion.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so could I have a motion?
Can I move to discuss?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a second? Okay, Mr. Perful seconds.
Okay, hang on one second. It's not a motion to discuss, it's a motion
To
to approve something, so,
Yes.
or to not approve something, or, yeah.
Can we move to approve these talking points?
Sharing and
at-
feedback.
At community events.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Perful seconds. Can you please announce that?
I second.
Thank you. Is there a discussion? Mr. Williams?
Yes. So I would just really want us to be very strategic in how we bring this up, because we don't want to undermine the purpose of an event. So like at Expo, highlight the great things that we're doing on our campuses and talk about your bond dollars at work. That's a great message. At family events on campuses, let's highlight how your bond dollars are being used on this campus. I think at some events with staff, they will have a lot of questions about what is this going to mean for me. Something I would definitely want to avoid is, I think even on this committee initially, we had some confusion ourselves about, as we rank these things, if something's ranked low, does that mean we're getting rid of it? I think that could cause a lot of confusion and fear if we said, hey, there's these 5 remaining things, rank them with staff or with families. I don't think that is going to add to the event in a really positive way. So I'm sure we would go about this carefully, but I just think we need to be very, very strategic on how we message.
So as you all recall, maybe from last year, when we did do the survey with parents and students, we kind of shared why we wanted to collect information on priorities and the importance of essentially prioritizing our budget and getting feedback. At that point, we didn't really discuss, hey, enrollment is declining. I think as a best practice, right, for the district, for transparency, for us as we go through the budget process, it's important for us to have feedback from all our community members. One of the things that we will also be doing this year is actually translating the bond presentation into Spanish, because we do have a large number of families and employees who are Spanish speaking, and so we're working on translating some of these presentations. But I agree with the statement of, depending on the event, right, when we do meet with staff, it will be more kind of to address their concerns, where when we meet with the community, it is, as a budget committee, we're tasked with prioritizing these different elements, and that's to help make our budget process more transparent in what we're doing.
Thank you, Dr. Dialba. I agree with both of what has been shared, just making it appropriate depending on the venue and the audience, right? But I also recognize that the list that's presented is heavily focused on community. And as a staff member, I just see staff meetings, and as we know, a lot of staff are unable to attend those meetings. I'd like for at least to have some discussion about other opportunities for staff members that aren't able to make it to staff meetings, like what other opportunities could be presented to meet the needs of those staff members.
A couple ideas I had was like the L&D days. I know those were on there, right? Those tend to have a little bit more time for staff to be together and maybe build it into those. Also, I know like our associations have weekly, if not monthly meetings, would potentially be a way to engage employees in those areas when they have their association meetings. So I think those would be great. And then just other things on the list of parent events, I think would be one, at least for Metro Tech. I know we have those once a month that gets high participation to get those, but those are some of my thoughts.
Thank you. I want to add as well, I'm really thinking, I keep looking at Anastasia. So I'm thinking about those staff members that aren't warranted or aren't afforded the opportunity for L&D days or maybe even association meetings, but you know, our bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, our safety workers, individuals like that, and I'm sure there's a much more with that regard, but I think of some of the construction workers and electrical workers and things like that that may not be able to make it out. So I'm curious to hear possibly of what other venues could be available.
Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to go to Ms. Schaefer first or if it's me first. She did have
Yes.
her hand. So.
Yes, I was just looking at you
Okay.
because it was on my mind, but yes, Ms. Schaefer.
I don't want you to lose that thread, Anastasia. I just wanted to add, educating the community and our staff member about the economics of running a school system, I think would be very beneficial. And also, I want to highlight that we're not in the red. We are being proactive. We've never been in the red. So putting that in, at the forefront as well.
I appreciate that because it is, while they are significant reductions, we're doing it to avoid being in the red. And so we're being fiscally sustainable and we're being responsible. And it's important, I think, that our community understands that. And so I do appreciate you bringing that up.
Thank you. Anastasia?
Thank you. And just a question for clarity. What we're saying here, are we voting on just these pieces of feedback or are we open to discussing further? Because we have some ideas. It's just I don't want to, lay those ideas out before having the discussion. So
Right. Thank you for that. It is open. So this is just a starting list,
Got it.
but it is open to explore other ways.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because I don't know if you see me like rolling around the chairs here, but really I was just kind of on the same kind of wavelength thinking like, how are we going to communicate this to some of our staff? Because I know gauging staff feedback is one of our challenges, especially our classified staff. And so I'm thinking about other opportunities that we might have where we have them already gathered. And so I think we're going to have further conversation to see if this would be something that this department would be open to. But there was an idea of utilizing some of our PD Saturdays, perhaps, any of those extra professional development opportunities. And again, I don't want to speak for the department and say that they're making room for that, but that's just one of the ideas that we're kind of going back and forth. And it would just potentially just look like a table or booth setup.
Thank you. Mr. Doherty?
I would just like to support the comment about our financial health and mention our bond ratings again. Like our bond ratings are a reflection of that financial health, and both of our bond ratings are the top 2 bond ratings. And so we are investment grade as far as bonds go. And so that's just another point to our financial health, and we are being proactive. And forward thinking on our strategy here. So, thank you.
Mr. Rennie?
The other group, I think, maybe is thinking about students and surveying students on some of this. And I think one thing I really appreciate about our district is we're always student-focused, student-centered. So getting student impact or getting student input on this stuff, I think would be important to add. And again, maybe it's during an advisory period, but giving them an opportunity to give some feedback too, I think should be added to this list too.
Thank you, Doug. One of the things is I know we already have a web page for our budget committee, but also I think we initially talked clearly defining those 10 priorities. You know, what people are ranking for, they want to know. So it would be nice to really give definitions of define each priority in a very simple, if you want to know more about it, what are these 10 means, kind of thing. Because last time we did it, the focus was to get more feedback. But this time, if we want to go back and ask feedback, there will be colleagues or community members who want to know about what those words mean. That is a part. Apart from that, in the same web page, I think we have some wonderful presentations. We have went through here, especially about Dr. D'Alba, your budget presentation is one, not the whole meeting, but just the budget presentation, or today's what is bond and override kind of thing for colleagues who want to know from any place. It can be an association who want to play the video for the members or anything else. But if we can strengthen the web page with the right information, not too much information, but FAQs kind of thing, that would be a good place so that we can share the same information in a lot of places. So that would be, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to add to Mr. Renning's statement about being student-focused, being on a campus myself. When students are asked to complete a survey or provide feedback during advisory, it's like pulling teeth. I would really like to encourage students by allowing them to take agency and maybe bringing in student groups to lead, possibly opportunities to get other students to participate. We've done it in the past when it comes to sports and other things like that, but with something like this, it would be nice to maybe get those student groups engaged in some way, identify a particular group on each campus and say, we'd like you to make posters, have them put up the QR codes using social media, because that's really what students respond to, and then present that in advisory, because a lot of times students are just, they feel like it's something else that they have to do, and there isn't really true agency in asking for their insight.
I think we have quite a bit of student involvement that or groups that we can reach out to on each campus, or maybe even starting with Stugo. I mean, that's one that comes to the board regularly. They seem to be they're involved in a lot of different things. So definitely that's something that we can look at. What I'm kind of seeing as a discussion is we have maybe if we can talk about okay, on the student end, it's going to be engaging a student organization. On the parent end, it sounds like the meetings with the principals have. That's kind of what we're looking at. And then the staff one, there was a couple of ideas. So I don't know, I think that maybe those two need to be defined, but it looked like in some way using learning and development days, and then maybe having a booth at the PD Saturdays that are available. So I don't know if that kind of summarizes what we've discussed right now. That's kind of what I've heard. I don't know if you want to.
I agree. And Mr. Williams had a comment.
I've agreed with everything that I'm hearing too, just to note that. But the purpose of these would be minifold, right? So we're still getting some input, but we're also, my understanding is we're also using some of these for voter education. Your bond dollars at work, please continue to approve these bonds, especially because of how it might show up on your tax statement. We want people to understand the value, how it's being used. Is that correct?
I would say that, yeah, it's right. We can't, I don't think that we can just say like, hey, organize these priorities. I know we did that in the beginning because we were starting, but just kind of where we're at now. And I think our collective understanding, it is like, here's an overview of, you know, how some of the functions or some of the things that are needed to operate the school financially. And then this is what, that's why we're asking for that feedback with those priorities. And I think that, I don't know that that needs to be necessarily decided right now. It's more like, what are the venues? And then what we can do is at the next meeting also have like, okay, this is like a sample, or like, here are a few samples of the directions we can go with educating. I will say that, well, obviously, I will, you know, I will be there. It will also be helpful if committee members attended so that y'all can share, and not everybody to every single meeting, but I think it's important that that they see everyone there, or some people there that can share, like, you know, this is stuff that we've learned about the complexity of this topic.
So something that comes to mind, if we are also educating local voters on how their school is being improved, which I think will also lead to people talking about the great improvements at their schools, understanding, you know, our plans. It would be good for student retention as well. We do have Parent Square now. It would be nice if marketing could maybe help schools out with something that could be sent out from each school. Here's what's on the docket for improvement on your campus. You might have seen some work going on. Let us tell you about this and how we're funding this, because I'm sure that some questions will happen also of, what do you mean there's potential rifts coming, but then also I see construction happening. So it's kind of that voter education, but also celebrating what's happening on your campus. Here's the improvements that are coming. Here's how it's being used.
Yeah, and I think that that's important. We can definitely have Mr. Franco come in and kind of talk about different options to do that with this committee.
Okay, I don't think there's any more discussion. We can go ahead and move forward with a vote on the plan to share and provide feedback and connect with our community in the 3 categories that Dr. Diallo kind of already identified, which is students, parents, and staff, respectfully. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
I do have one question though. It's too late. In terms of the expo, did we want to put a table there?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I believe that, yes,
Okay.
but just keeping it focused on the appropriateness of the venue, correct?
The great,
Highlighting
the great new things coming in our district. Yeah.
Yes, and I can commit to being there. Just throwing that out there now.
Yep, and I will be there. So, wonderful.
And I will be there.
Okay. So that concludes all of our agenda items. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
I motion.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.